Welcome to the Cultivating Health Equity Stories podcast. In this captivating series, we delve into the heart of health equity, sharing stories that illuminate the path toward a fairer, more inclusive healthcare landscape. Our mission is to amplify voices, challenge norms, and inspire change. Here is your host, Dr. Throy Campbell, a research scientist on health equity issues.
Today we have a truly inspiring guest joining us. Dr. Vivia Haye, a cancer survivor, brings a wealth of wisdom and resilience to our conversation. Beyond her medical battle, we'll explore how her unique background and life challenges have shaped her journey. Dr. Haye, thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me to share my journey this afternoon.
This is our second recording with Dr. Haye. We've talked about her life experiences before. We will ensure to paste her the link to that episode in this show notes. But in any event, Dr. Haye, we're going to delve into your experiences, and we're sure this is going to be of such value to our audience. So, growing up in rural Jamaica with 10 brothers and being raised by your mother, those early experiences must have profoundly influenced your character, your resilience. So, can you share how those formative years prepared you for the challenges ahead?
Absolutely. You know, from as early as the age of 9 years old, as I can recall, I
Mm,
started to face some really serious challenges in my young life. And one such event that stood out to me was when I got burned all over, about maybe 50% of my body. My
mm,
mom back then had a shop where she used to sell different stuff, you know, within the community. We call it like a shop, so to speak, in the Caribbean.
yeah,
And
yeah.
one afternoon, my brother and I, we were playing in the shop. I was running behind him, and she had a pot of cerasee on the stove. Back then, we called it hot plate, a hot plate. And
Yeah.
somehow must have missed my step because the cord was across the way as I ran, and my foot got caught into the cord, and the
Mm,
pot of cerasee turned over and splashed on over 50% of my body. And I am telling you, that was something else. That
yeah,
experience, as a
yeah.
result of that experience, I had to sit out of primary school for about 2 months, 2.5 months.
Mm,
And so during that time, it was a time of reflection for me as a young child. Can you imagine at the age of 9, missing your
man,
friends, missing out on school, getting ready to prepare for common entrance and not being able to sit because of this situation?
right.
However, I believe that experience kind of helped me and it kind of shaped me to fight, to heal. And, you know, it is said that we overcome adversity. I believe that this experience not only shaped my resilience as a person, but it
Right.
allowed me to bounce back despite the disappointments. And it
Yeah.
also helped me to develop what I now know today as grit. So from that early age, I was building up grit, you know,
Yeah.
which would
Yeah.
help me for the coming years ahead.
I know the audience want to know what happened when you went back to school with the scars, perhaps. I just, can you tell us? How was that experience?
From reflecting and looking back, I remember my
Mm,
friends, they were very, very, you know, happy to see me. They were sad to see the scars that were
mm,
visible because the pot of water burned from my back. So it was from the upper torso all the way down to my
mm.
foot. So you couldn't really visibly see something because my front
It's
was
covered.
not
Yeah.
affected.
Yeah.
So most of the scars were covered. But I still
Yeah.
live with those scars today. And every time I look at it, I recall that experience. But they were very, very compassionate.
Um, I, then you left from primary school, as we call it in the Caribbean, and went on to high school. How was your high school years? Can you speak briefly about that?
So, my high school years were very interesting. And this all goes back to how I was reared. My
Mm-hmm.
mom was a businesswoman. And even though she did not get a chance to complete higher learning in her time, I think she went up to what they call third year back in Jamaica. She had to quit school to help her mom and her older sister with their business at the time. But despite those setbacks, she was able to read quite fluently and she had a great sense of penmanship. I say this
Mm.
to say that the way how she grew up and what she went through also kind of helped to shape my journey as I left from home to go to high school. Did my common entrance at the age of 11. And
Yeah.
so there were certain things that happened in between there, right? In my mother's early years of working, she kind of developed an affinity for starting her own business. And so I remember as a young child seeing my parents in business. My father was a businessman. He was a mechanic, a welder. He did farming. My did business with the shop. Also, they had a minivan that they ran transportation
Yeah.
from Westmoreland all the way to Kingston. So both of them
Wow.
were very business minded. And at the age of 47, my father had already attained 11 and a half acres of land. He
Mm.
had attained all these different vehicles, tractors, trailers. We used to pull cane and stuff like that. So I grew up around a set of parents who were very business minded. And
Entrepreneurs, right?
their desire was for their children also to learn from their experience and also develop their lives from there. And so my father unfortunately passed before I got a chance to take my common entrance and to go off to high school. And I can
Mm.
recall him sharing with me and telling me how to keep my focus, not to get into trouble, to study hard so I could pass my common entrance, which I did. Unfortunately, he died
Mm-hmm.
the year prior, but I did went on to take my common entrance. I passed my exam and I passed for school in the city. So
Yeah.
I'm from the country, Westmoreland, and I passed to go to Montego Bay High, which is considered a city. And so that in itself was a
What's the
challenge.
name of the community in Westmoreland? Because there might be Jamaicans listening to this and can locate
Yes,
exactly where you were.
I am from Shrewsbury district,
Yeah.
Petersfield, Westmoreland.
Petersfield.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So
And you had to go on the other side of the island to Montego Bay
to
to high school.
Montego
Yeah.
Bay, which was quite a
Yeah.
few miles away. And so I passed my common entrance, and now my mom was left with, having to take care of 12 children, no husband because her husband has now, been deceased. And,
Mm.
me being the eldest girl now passing common entrance to go to the high school and not in the area, but outside of the area. This was very challenging for her because she had to get the monies to get me ready, think about me having to board because traveling back and forth would have been extremely
Right. Would have
difficult.
been difficult. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I can recall because they were business people, they used to rear a lot of animals, so like cows and goats and pigs and chickens. And I can recall her
Real country style. Yeah.
yes, selling a cow. I can recall her selling a cow to find my first tuition, so to speak,
Oh,
for me to go
nice.
to high
Nice.
school. And she paid for the first term, took me there. One of the good things that was in my favor was that the principal of the high school at that time was her neighbor. They kind of grew up together. They were like family from where she came from in Jamaica. And so that in itself was favor there for me.
Mm-hmm.
The challenges that brought me there, was something else because it was very difficult for her to continue paying the school tuition every term. And so we had to figure out a way. How was my school fee going to be paid? I'm in the city. What's going to happen? So after my father passed, his brother, who lived in the States, came to us after the funeral and he said, you know, I want to honor my brother's legacy. I had promised that I would assist him before he passed, but unfortunately, he's no more. So I would like to, you know, go ahead and help someone else in the family. And so he chose two of the children. One of them was me, and I had a younger brother whom he decided that he would take under his wings, so to speak, and he would assist us wherever necessary. And
That's
so
beautiful.
that came in and made a big difference in my high school years because he was the one who paid for my tuition every term and made sure that I had the necessities for school. But it wasn't easy. There were
Right.
times when the money did not come on time. And if we know Jamaica, you know, for school, you have to have those fees in on time to start.
Yeah.
And so that in itself was a challenge. Another challenge I faced was where would I live? And so my mom had a sister who lived in that area. And so it was decided I would go there, I would live with her, but I would also have to contribute monetary for my stay there to help with my food and lodging and so forth. And so there were months when the money didn't come in on time for my uncle and my aunt had to pitch in. I had to learn how to survive in terms of being smart with my money. It was very, very challenging, but I think that it kind of also helped to develop my personality as well. And it also helped me to be more resilient. I recall one special time when, you know, there were times when I would go back to the country to visit my siblings. And as I go back to visit, I would visit other family members. My mom had a sister who they were very close. Both of them had 12 children alike. And so I
Your aunt had 12 children and your mom had 12 children.
12.
Very fruitful family.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So my mom had 10 boys and 2 girls. Her sister had 6 boys and 6 girls. And so they tended to be very close together. So they were very close knit. And we would visit each other's home. And when I started high school, I recalled, you know, she saying to me, I know things are tough with you, and I know you're going through a challenging time. You don't have any father anymore. It's your mother alone with all these children. But remember these things. If you want good, your nose have to run. And she would say, the humblest calf sucketh the most milk. And I'm
Milk.
telling you, those two proverbs really took me through. When the times came where I had challenges, I always remember those words. And those were some of the things that took me through high school and helped me tremendously to overcome some of the socioeconomic challenges that I faced.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, beautiful. I could listen to this all day, and I know the audience is enjoying it. As promised, we have another episode with Dr. Haye where she talked more about her time in Jamaica and just growing up. And we will ensure to put the link to that episode in the show notes. So you've learned so much, you know, through the struggles, you were learning important things about life that would equip you. And so, Dr. Haye, you mentioned your uncle who lived in the United States, and I gather that after high school, you moved from Jamaica to Florida, where your uncle was. Can you fill in the story and tell us how much of a difference? What was significant about the transition you made?
It was significant in the fact that it was a new place. I was away from my family, my siblings, my mom. I was away from that familiar environment I was used to. And even though I had transitioned from the country to the city, now it's from the city to a new country, new culture. everything is different. Not being able to connect with my siblings on a regular basis at
Must
all.
have been difficult,
Um,
right?
Fluctuating temperatures, new environments, no money. So all these changes just kind of enveloped me
Yeah,
all at once. So
yeah.
it was a very significant transition, coming to a new place, not knowing anyone, and then landing in Florida, of all the places, which was good. The climate was similar to where I was coming from, but I was in a county where it was more geared for the elderly. So there were
Mm,
not much young people. They were mostly
mm,
retired individuals. So you can
right.
imagine I'm coming into their environment.
This was where your uncle lived, right?
Lived, yes. So it was a
Right. Okay.
retirement community.
Okay.
And
I'm
that
with you.
kind of made things a little different for me. By now, I was about 17 years old.
Mm,
And
mm,
so I kind of knew what I wanted by this time, what my desire was, what I wanted to become. And so in the back of my mind, I kept that, you know. And even though I had challenges, for example, I knew I wanted to become a doctor someday.
yes.
And I knew that it would come to a reality, but as to how, that I didn't know. And so things did not really go the way I was expecting them. I was hoping that I would get enrolled in school right away, and things would keep flowing. But was I in for a rude awakening?
Yeah.
After one
Yeah.
month of being here, my uncle looked at me and he says, "Guess what? You're with me in a retirement area where it's slow, there's no jobs, no young people. You need to move to the city where the action is." And
Wow. Yeah,
at that,
so I'm so consumed by your story, and I can't help but admire your uncle. And he spent whatever he could, I imagine, and he helped you to move to the United States.
Mhm.
He's probably older age, living in a retirement area, and he's saying to his young niece that you need to move to the metropolitan area, right, where you get more job opportunities. And I can
Yes.
understand the logic in that, but for a young lady in a foreign country, you know, tell us more. It's
Yeah, so
this is something else. Yeah.
1 month later, I found myself. He said to me, "I've done all I can. I've taken you through
Yeah.
high school and all of that. I've brought you here. Now you're going to have to do something for you. I'm going to take you to the city. I'm going to find somewhere for you to stay. I can only afford to pay 1 month's rent. And after
Oh
that, I'm
Lord.
hoping within that month, you'll be able to pick up a job and start the
Right.
ball a rolling." Talk about being thrown into the sea and not
Yeah.
knowing how to swim
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
being able to stay afloat and not drown. Yeah, that's kind of what it was like. So
That. Yeah.
I was taken to the city of Miami. I was placed with
Miami.
yes, Miami of all the
Yeah.
places back in the 80s,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
I was placed with a young couple who had just gotten married, and they had a home and they had an extra room, and they were looking for the extra income. So I was
Right.
like,
Right.
this is a good opportunity for them. And they paid a month's rent as they promised. And during that month, I found myself every single day on the streets of Miami, walking up and down from store to store, filling out applications and being told, "You're too young. You don't have any experience. We can't
Yeah.
hire you without experience." And
Right.
after 30 days almost of doing that, I was back to square one. I was like, what am I going to do now? Nobody wants to hire me. I can't find a job. I have no money. My uncle will not be able to pay another rent for me. And so I reached out to them and I said to him, I haven't been able to find a job. And so he came down to Miami and he met with me and the family and was very determined. He was like, we don't have any more money. We can't afford to pay another month's rent. You're going to have to figure this out. This is more than we bargained for. We're
Mm-hmm.
sorry, but this is the best we can do. And the couple was like, we can't afford to keep her another month without any funds. And so I was between a rock and a hard place. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
God works in mysterious ways, his wonders to
Yeah.
perform. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the Lord allowed me to recall family members whom I lived with in Jamaica for a little while before I came here. I started to look in my belongings with numbers and stuff, and I was able to locate the telephone number of a cousin who lived in Fort Lauderdale. And
Oh,
so
nice.
I called him up. I told him what the situation was, you know, what my ultimatum was. And he said to me, I just have a 2-bedroom apartment. It's me and my wife. We have
Wow.
2 children. One is a newborn, but you can come and you can stay in my son's room and we'll try to see what we can figure out. And so he came for me and took me up to Fort Lauderdale.
Thank God for that.
And thank God for that. And that kind
Yeah.
of turned things around for me
Around.
because
All right.
I got
Yeah.
to Fort Lauderdale. He was very well known. So he had a lot of friends. And so he was able to connect me with one of his friends who got me a job. And I
Mm.
was able to
Mm.
secure my first job in the United States of America.
Nice.
And
Nice.
that was something, that's another episode in itself.
I know, I know, and you have such an interesting story. And again, we refer to the other episode that we have, and then there's the whole experience of going to college and how you moved on through graduate studies.
Hmm.
And again, I refer to the other episode where you give all the details there. Do you
Yes.
want to mention something quickly before we go
Well,
into your experience, perhaps while you were in
in
college?
college, yes. Um, College was very stressful. And one of the things I had to do, I just had to tell myself, listen, you got to do what you got to do. You know,
Mm.
I had to learn the culture. I had to realize that I had to survive. I had to make friends. I had to come out of my shell because I was very sheltered and shy. And I had to understand that, listen, I need support. I craved for support. I was not an island by myself, and people were out there who would help me. As they say in Jamaica, closed mouth does not get fed. So I had to open my
Yes,
mouth.
I
I
like
had
that.
I had to ask for help. I had also to work and go to school at the same time, and that in itself was
Right.
very challenging for me. Started my undergraduate studies for nursing, and so I had to support myself. And so I took out loans, which I still haven't finished paying off for. And
Yeah,
those student loans, they follow you forever.
they do.
And
They do.
but that's what helped me to survive back then. Whatever
Right.
was left over, I would use it to, to purchase a
To
car
take
so
care
I
of.
could
Right.
get around and stuff like that. But school itself was very, very challenging. The curriculum was different from what I was used to in Jamaica. We're used to essay type writing. Here it's multiple choice. So I had to
Mm.
develop grit again and a new way of
Yeah.
thinking, changing my perspective. And there were moments when I felt very overwhelmed. And one such moment was during the nursing program, during the last 8 weeks of the nursing program. I'm not sure if I shared that story on the other episode. Things got so overwhelming that I I started to feel as if I wanted to give up.
Mm.
And so in the last 8 weeks of school, I was working 40 hours on the weekend and going to school Monday through Friday. So I would leave school at 12 o'clock on a Friday and I would go to work from 1 to 9. And then I'd
Mm.
work from 8 a.m. on a Saturday till midnight, 8
Mm.
a.m. on a Sunday till midnight to make my 40 hours. And this went on for
In 3 days.
8 weeks. In three
Wow.
days, 40 hours in 3 days. And this went on for the entire semester. But the last 8 weeks of this was where it was really like crunch time and became overwhelming to the point that I thought I was going to break. But something happened during those last 8 weeks, which I wanted to share. And this was when I went to bed one night and I had a vision. I had a vision, and I found myself in a place where I would describe it as an outer body experience. I know some individuals may not believe in this, but I can tell you I experienced it
Right.
firsthand. And I was looking at my body. I was like up in the heavens, looking down on my body on earth. And when I looked, I saw a lot of people were around me and they were trampling on me. And I started to cry and I started to pray and I asked the Lord, what is the meaning of this? Why are they trampling on me? And he's like, the angel says, wait a minute, you're going to see. Don't worry, just relax. Everything will be okay. And this went on for a little bit. But after a while, I realized my body that was on the earth that I was looking at started to raise up from the earth, and I stood up and I started to walk through the crowd, and the people that were around me were looking in awe and they were saying, isn't this the lady that they were just trampling? Look
Right.
at her now, and she's walking through the
Amazing.
crowd. And I just kept walking, and I said, Lord, what is the meaning of this vision? And he said to me that this is how your life has been. Your life has been a life of obstacles and challenges where you feel as if everything is caving in and everybody is trampling on you and beating up on you. But you just need to continue persevering. You're going to make it. You're going to get up. You're going to walk tall and you're going to be successful. And this vision has followed me throughout my entire life. Everything that I have touched has been challenging. But in the end, I have somehow surmounted all the challenges and come out victorious. And I
You
always
have
recall that vision. Yeah.
that vision.
You know,
That vision.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
And thank you for sharing. And it helps me to transition
Mm-hmm.
to something we want to talk about here. And this is, your experience with cancer.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, your body. The idea behind this show, Dr. Haye, is that health equity is a lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
We also believe that one's background helps to shape how they deal with a certain illness. And so we appreciate this opportunity to talk about your experience as a cancer survivor, right? So here's my first question on this. Can you take us back, your cancer journey, starting from when you discovered your diagnosis?
Thanks for listening to Cultivating Health Equity Stories. Remember, our mission is to amplify voices, challenge norms, and inspire change. Go to cultivatehealthequity.com, sign up on our email list, subscribe for future episodes, and find the resources mentioned in the show notes. Until next time.